Hey, welcome back everyone. It is now the end of September of 2022, and as we get closer to the release date of Tales of the Jedi, which by the way is going to be the last Star Wars TV show for this year before we get into 2023, with the, of course, Ahsoka series, Mando 3, and a whole lot more on the horizon as well. That's really going to be crafted by Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and others out there. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, with a lot of things happening at one time, of course, between Jon and Dave, they have a lot of projects being worked on simultaneously in different phases, a lot of which are in the early development phase, some of which are in post-production or principal photography. There's a lot of things going on right now behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm, and one thing in particular that a lot of fans have always been very upset about is, of course, what happened in The Last Jedi with how Luke was treated by director Rian Johnson, and what Mark Hamill had to say about all of that. Now, one thing about everything related to Mark Hamill is that as of right now, he's in a much better spot because he is working with Jon and Dave. He actually has a multi-show contract deal to come back in The Mandalorian Season 4 and other Star Wars TV shows, other surrounding spin-offs, and a whole lot more on the horizon as well. Now, with that being said, what's even all the more exciting has a lot to do with the fact that Jon Favreau is taking a lot of Legends elements of Luke and throwing it into the Disney canon. However, what Mark Hamill recently had to say and apologize about really does raise an eyebrow about a couple of things when it comes to how Disney works as a company, or at least used to work as a company under Bob Iger's, supervision. So, with that being said, with many new Star Wars TV shows currently in the works by Favreau and Filoni, many of which will be announced next year, Disney CEO Bob Chapek has been making some key changes behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm. However, it's described that in a recent interview with Mark Hamill, he got involved, of course, and went on to apologize to the fandom about something very specific by stating the following: "Where I am now, working so closely with Jon and Dave, has brought me so much joy in my life, and just exploring this new side of Luke, I want to openly say to fans that I really do apologize, and I am so deeply sorry over creating such conflict and division between the Star Wars fans. When I first revealed, I had very big criticism for how Luke was done in The Last Jedi by Rian. It seemed to validate other fans' thoughts about the film and my character. Disney had approached me at the time to reverse my statements, in order to not let things go out of hand and, of course, with the fans going out of control. But I will admit that what I said was true about Luke and my feelings about how he was used in The Last Jedi. I felt the character was so out of place and just not well formed for the film." Now let me just pause here quickly for a second of what Mark Hamill is saying here. This is obviously Mark confirming that Disney came to him either through email or phone call, whatever it may have been, any kind of communication, telling him to reverse his statements about having that big criticism of how Rian Johnson was handling Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. You guys may vividly remember this. Back in early 2018, it was right around that time, I would say around February or March, which is where Mark Hamill started to really openly say how unhappy he was with Luke Skywalker in Episode 8. And it was around the summer of that very year where he actually reversed all of his statements, where he started agreeing with Rian Johnson magically out of the blue, and really just supporting that version of Luke. So here, Mark Hamill has absolutely nothing to apologize for. He's apologizing for two things, one of which, apologizing for him supposedly creating the division, where I don't even think that was the case. I think fans already made up their minds when they saw this movie before what Mark Hamill said in early 2018. And second is that Mark Hamill's also apologizing over the fact that he had to actually essentially lie to the fans about how he truly felt about Luke because Disney had approached him at the time. This, by the way, was when Bob Iger was the CEO and running the show, telling, of course, Kathleen Kennedy, or Kathleen Kennedy telling Bob Iger, vice versa. It worked both ways like that, on how to run Star Wars. Now, of course, that led to further problems, because Mark Hamill felt like he couldn't really openly talk about Luke in an honest manner, which is why you haven't really heard him talking about it as much, but recently he has been a lot more talkative about it, because he is under, of course, creative control with Jon and Dave. Now, moving forward from all of that, he goes on to say, I felt the character was out of place and just not well formed. I also apologize if I created confusion about my stance and opinion on The Last Jedi's version of Luke by Johnson. The back and forth I did was based on PR and controlling the negativity, and I just want to come forward and make things straight with fans. That we were actually going, of course, in a different direction, but now, with Jon and Dave, it's something beautiful to look forward to, and I couldn't be happier for the fandom. We have some great things that are being worked on that I will be able to talk about more in the coming months with you all. It was never my intention to create fan division after The Last Jedi came out in theaters, and ever since I said what I said, I am happy to see some fans realizing that was, of course, there are greater things to come. Now, Mark Hamill, once again, I have to say, he has nothing to apologize for. Alright, the main reason why he's apologizing is because he believes that he was the one that caused the division between fans. It's not the case. I think that, if anything, everything that came before it caused the division. What Rian Johnson had done, based on the reviews and people checking out the movie, walking out of the theaters, it was all word of mouth. It was. It had nothing to do with Mark, it had nothing to do with what Mark Hamill said, or anything in those interviews back in early 2018. And that brings us to where we are now. Mark Hamill is very happy, more than satisfied, about what Jon and Dave are currently putting together for the future of the Mandoverse, which he openly says that he's going to be able to talk more about this in the coming months. Now, we already know that he's working heavily on The Mandalorian Season 4. There's a lot of talk that he will be involved, of course, in the Ahsoka series. There's a lot of concept art and storyboards that were created for the Ahsoka show that involved Luke actually interacting with Ahsoka. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But what's even more involved here is the fact that Mark Hamill is making it clear that Disney, at the time when Bob Iger was running the show, was trying to control the entire situation, where he was basically having Mark Hamill lie to the audience that he loved that version of Luke, that he supports what Rian Johnson had done. And you know what? What Mark Hamill also said in that documentary, that's forever. You're not going to get rid of that. So them controlling Mark Hamill really made no sense. It really didn't move anything in any direction. If anything, it just shows us that they were really trying to control the whole show about what was happening with the fan reaction, right? Because they knew that if Mark Hamill would just keep openly saying that he is criticizing Luke and that he's not on board with it, it was only going to validate things that were already made up in the minds of fans. So, anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.